and welcome to the Q&R Code podcast with your redhead co-host twins, Quinn and Riley. This is Quinn introducing the episode, and speaking of redheads, my oh my, has it been the time of the season for redheads online this past week. Redheads unite. I feel like this has mostly stayed on TikTok. Riley, I don't know if you've seen any about it on Instagram, but for anyone less online than I am, this week the content, I mean, every time I've been on TikTok, all that comes up is from this video that a black woman made saying, just as a reminder to you guys, redheads are black people, so just keep that in mind. They've always been black people, and now there's this huge commentary happening online about basically how redheads have faced lots of discrimination and like bullying and teasing about their different looks throughout their lives. And then, I mean, the rabbit hole has just gotten farther and farther that people have gone down, bringing up Irish people and how Irish people, there was a time that they were enslaved and that was happening in Jamaica and etc., etc. Like, there's so much lore behind it, but I just thought first thing, top of the episode, might as well bring up the redheads and black people sisterhood.
Yeah, it's so funny that one video like that can just catch a spark on the internet and cause such a cascade of discussion being a trend. I was just thinking about how that woman that made the initial video, with the algorithm, it could have only 100 people could have seen it and it not gain traction, and then it was a funny thing that she made and said, but that's where it ends. And then sometimes things go this other direction and become so viral and other people are making videos off of it. And I love the redheads. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling sorry for my fellow gingers right now, because apparently people have felt very uncool and very lonely for quite some time. People are commenting this is the first time I've ever felt cool or special and included in a group, and I love that you get to feel embraced by community and you deserve that. And also think that in some ways I maybe had a different experience of being a redhead, because I've always loved my red hair and felt cool, if you will, or at least very happy with that. I have never thought that I had any resentment towards my red hair. I think it's such a special feature, and it probably helps that I have my siblings all redheads too. But yeah, it was a surprise to me, because I don't feel that it's happening over on Instagram. And when I came onto our Q&R Code account, completely unrelated, just a reel from our podcast that we made, people were like, oh my gosh, redheads, and it started getting those comments like, oh, this is a redheaded podcast. I'm like, yes, you guys, you didn't know, we are the twin redhead podcast. Hard to maybe convey that in an audio format more than us just telling you, but we've been redheads, we'll stay redheads, even as the color fades, the heart stays the same.
I bet actually that us being in a family with 4 siblings, us all having red hair, probably did affect our redhead experience, because I feel like a lot of redheads are there's one redhead sibling in the family, and then sometimes people will have that their cousins are redhead too or whatever. But I don't know.
To give you perspective, I remember the first time I heard the phrase redheaded stepchild, I thought it meant you were being treated like a special kid because you married into this family, and then there's this awesome redhead and they get the special treatment.
Okay, you somehow internalized red hair very uniquely, right? I don't feel like I thought of mine as a bad thing, but I definitely was not thinking, oh, redheaded stepchild, serve. Yes, no, I, I mean, I remember when like we got those little compact, I don't know if it was setting powder or foundation that someone, a grandma or something when we were very little, gave to us to like play with because it was in a pretty little container. And I remember being like, yes, cover the freckles, like, cover the freckles. So I don't know. I remember being highly complimented as a redhead, but also having, I definitely feel like what people have brought up about the fetishization of redheads is very true, and that even just the other day, actually, I was thinking about the whole black and redhead community TikTok situation when I'm just walking into the grocery store, like quickly zipping on my way to run in before work, and a guy that's, I don't know, 30 feet away from me shouts, "It's a redhead!" And I'm just like I feel in very often throughout our life that it has just been pointed out to a degree that sometimes it is, even maybe from these men, it's considered as compliments, but I feel that I have been definitely fetishized throughout our lives. Like, even recently, a couple of months ago, Sean was with me, and this older couple, like maybe they're boomers or something, or actually maybe Gen X. The I was talking to the wife for 1 second, literally passing by. We weren't like hanging out with them, literally just passing by, said something, and the guy to Sean started being like, "Oh, I bet you have a lot of fun with her. I bet she gets crazy." And like, you
Ew.
know that she's wild. You know that like the way she is, just wild personality can converts to being wild elsewhere. And Sean's like, I quite literally have no idea who you are. It's not
Yeah.
funny.
I hate that, and I also, to be clear, I'm not saying I have never like felt any of those repercussions. I was more talking about my deep core, like young childhood feeling was very confident with that, and then of course socialization happens, and there's the South Park episode, and gingers have no souls, and all this stuff, and like, yeah, Carrot Top making fun of pale skin, all those things came in, but I think fundamentally it helps that I loved it, and it just is so much part of our identity as siblings that I would never want that to change, and it's such a special thing. And I also have genuinely felt like, of course, I would love my child however they are, but it is gonna feel so weird to me. I feel like if my kid isn't a redhead, I'm like, that's gonna be a different sort of life. I just am so, it is so tied into your identity in a funny way. And I love freckles and I think that they're so cute. I do expect effort towards sun protection measures if we haven't made that clear enough. I'm not out there trying to roast and toast myself, but I think freckles are so adorable. Everyone's special, whatever. I'm sorry that that man was a creep to you, and also the way that men will be out here with their wives making comments like that. It's like, what's your problem? Why would you say
Yeah.
that to anyone anyway, period? But it does feel like you would have another level of accountability when your partner's right there. And if I were her, I would be like, you actually, such a turnoff. Now what? Like, I don't know. I do not know what I would do if Braden, I can't even fathom him making a weird, like, sexual comment to someone else, period, because he's not like that. in general, it would be very upsetting to me, but also like with me and then to a man with someone else in a couple, I actually am thinking, wow, I don't want to be a dramatic about that, but it feels like a deal breaker. It just feels like you're not the type of person that I would fundamentally want to be with if you're doing some really inappropriate, immature things like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, those people too are so insecure that Sean, what he did in that situation is he just literally, he had been exchanging a pleasantry, so had started smiling, and then when he started saying that stuff, Sean just like face dropped and completely disengaged and was like, "No, I don't really get what you're talking about." And so then in that moment, they get insecure. It's like, yeah, you are just not a secure in yourself person, I feel like, if you are approaching other people in that way. And also, just what a gross creep. Like, I look way younger than you, and I'm clearly. The situation, it was very clear I am with Sean, romantically involved. It was just a horrible situation, but it's not the first time I've been in a situation like that, and I fear it
Yeah.
won't be the last, but there is I don't know. I have so much to think about. The twin thing for us, so much that I think about. The redhead thing for us and all of our siblings, I also agree. I constantly think like my babies, it just seems like they will have red hair, but I know that I will love and they will feel like my babies no matter what they look like, but it is kind of crazy. Riley and I definitely just associate like our family with having red hair, I feel like. But
Speaking of
also,
hair,
I just want to
sorry.
say thank you to the black community because I'm like, even though obviously, like, some of this, do I actually think that I am a black person? No, obviously not. But I do really
Yes.
appreciate.
Yes, I
I'm like,
do.
yes, now finally I can say it. That is my identity. Um, no, but I do feel like this. It is just a community building thing that I feel like is so fun. That is the type of stuff that is fun and just good positive vibes on the internet. And so many people are coming forward, sharing their story and being like, dude, I've always thought that about redheads. And like, redheads always have been, um, down, and like I feel like redheads and black people have been best friends for a long time, and whatever, there has just been so much like wholesome storytelling on the internet that I'm like, you know what? Thank you. And we feel seen and we feel appreciated. And you taking us into your corner and being like, even just what people have said, being like, oh, I didn't realize that redheads felt like othered from other white people. And I just appreciate and think it's like a fun moment.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And on the topic of solidarity and the black community, this episode we want to explain ourselves about some things, so I might as well jump right into it. That I don't feel like my thoughts were fully expressed or understood about sinners, because it did come to my attention that people were feeling like to not really appreciate the vampires side of it is like missing the whole point. And I just want to say that I think that
Did you talk
metaphoric.
about this on the podcast?
Yes, we talked about how I went to the movies.
Okay.
I thought it was a
Sometimes
pretty
I
good
can't
movie,
remember what's
but
between you and me and what's between us and the Q&R code.
yes. And basically, I just felt like the vampire part was kind of cheesy. And I'm not saying that that couldn't be like an effective metaphor for how white people have really like sucked out like a vampire black culture and taken that sound in the music in the movie, specifically talking about like music for their own and like wanting to take black culture and have it for them and not appreciating like the people behind it. And I think that like story wise really makes sense. It's just my personal experience watching the movie and seeing like how well done this build up was, that the way the film like rendered the vampires did kind of take me out of it, because it didn't feel as like real and visceral as the other elements were. And I know it's a supernatural thing, but I you can watch some movies that are fantasy and still feel like fully in it and fully involved, and it's not because to me it's like a mystical creature. It was just like they had these glowing red eyes. There were some ways about it that were kind of comical, and someone else that I heard speaking about it said that they felt that was kind of like an intentional element to show, like, basically to make these characters kind of look like fools, like they're not these like super, I don't know, to be taken that seriously, yet they still have the power to really hurt people. And that's what I love about art, is there are all sorts of ways that you can get into it, all sorts of ways that you can interpret. You can pretty much make an argument to like forward any experience of it, and I just wouldn't want me saying like it wasn't my favorite movie to come across as tone deaf or not understanding like the impact of having black art, and on a big scale, especially like a huge box office hit that comes in and does way better than Nosferatu, which was like the most recent other vampire movie that came out. I think it's so significant. I think it deserves to be celebrated, and like I said then and I feel now, you should go see it, because I think it's a powerful movie, makes good points, and was enjoyable to watch. Basically, can't really go into every sort of way I feel about it. As you guys know, our Challengers movie deep dive was like a 2 hour episode, and I didn't even feel like we unpacked everything that we could because nuance. But yeah, I just felt like I don't want to take away from people that really resonate with something that is about like their experience and culture, and it's not for me to say that that doesn't resonate with you, and I wasn't trying to in the first place, but hopefully that clarifies my feelings about it.
I think that it is obviously fair for everyone to have their own opinions about how they perceive all sorts of art, movies, music, shows. Like, that is very personal opinion, and also you can have one opinion the first time you watch something, and you might return to it and watch it again, and you might no longer feel like that. For the vampire element, I understand where people might be coming from, like, okay, well, Twilight is obviously this ginormous hit that made history, and maybe they didn't feel like white people were commenting on it being like, this is cheesy, when I'm sure I haven't even seen Twilight, but I'm sure that that's giving cheesy. So I feel like taking that stance about it might have just felt like, are you understanding the point, which is what you just clarified. But I think that it's hard sharing, even with the very small platform that Riley and I currently have. It's so special getting to share, and we clearly are the ones deciding to share our opinions, and it is always a back and forth that we run through in our head, because it's special and exciting, and we love to share our conversations, and we have this podcast for multiple different reasons, but it is vulnerable, and I do not want to be, and I am not a white privileged person apologist, but I think in general how I feel about anyone who puts themselves out there, including even like the directors and producers of that movie, of Sinners, is like everyone should be able to take a step back when they're considering what someone is showing through, whether, whatever art form they're expressing themselves with. Again, that doesn't mean if someone comes onto the internet with a hateful, derogatory opinion that it's like, oh, but let's hold space for them. And no, but I think, like in the tradwife conversation we had, I think there's plenty wrong with the tradwife phenomena on social media, and I don't think that to come on, like, jump on people's backs and attack them as if, like, you literally, people are offered death threats and very serious repercussions for someone being like, this is the cake that I baked for my 4-year-old. Like, I think we just need to keep things in perspective when we're sharing our opinions, that it's totally fine if we share an opinion and then people have their opinion to share and to continue to educate us and whatever. Not even really saying this about us. I feel like I really lost the plot. What I'm thinking is a very abstract thought that I understand in my mind so well, but is so hard for me to actually come up with the words to really formulate, because I do think that we need to be careful, particularly as privileged white people, being like, oh, give influencers a chance, or give like social media personalities a break and whatever, when so many of them are other privileged white people that are maybe not being super thoroughly thoughtful of what they're sharing at times. But I do think that the internet is something that it is such a balance that has to be struck between understanding that influencers are challenged all the time for, oh, you just share a highlight reel and you just share the expensive stuff and the house you're renovating. But then if influencers come to the table and share something that's harder that they're going through, then it's like, oh my gosh, you're so they complain and they're so privileged and their life is not even hard. So I don't know.
It's just it's a hard balance to strike when you can recognize your privilege and those advantages, and people are just people and going through lived experiences, and as much as you might not like it, Selena Gomez has hard parts of her life too, and she feels sad, and she goes through these things.
The internet thinks that. Maybe your example should be Hailey Bieber.
Okay, fair, but just remember when Selena Gomez I don't remember how recently, a couple months ago, posted a video crying, like, so upset about a crisis, and people were saying, like, oh, you're sitting in your mansion, whatever. I don't even, why would I even open that door to commenting on that specific situation? I don't know, I guess I just want the internet to come for us, but my feeling is that people are people, and there's a time to hold people accountable, and there's a time for grace, and also the way that, like, what people pass off now as, like, holding each other accountable, a lot of the times is actually not doing that. It's not in good faith, like, showing up to try to get to a solution. If you've ever had a conversation with a loved one that was difficult, you think that they're in the wrong, and you're trying to get on the same page with them, these conversations take time, and a lot of the times you don't even arrive in the conversation like fully able to express yourself either, and it's a work in progress, and you firing off like a mean Instagram comment is clearly just not in the name of progress. So we need to not act like we're doing something heroic and holding people accountable by like dogpiling people. And also, I know that it's like partially like, oh, but it's in good fun, but it's also just exhausting the level of minutia that gets so picked apart. The other day, somebody was making a cooking video and they called the sauce they were making a gravy, and somebody's like, a gravy is a sauce made from the drippings of meat, and this yada yada is not a gravy. And then that comment had a reply, that is not the definition of a gravy. A gravy is when a starch is combined. And the argument that was going on about this, I was like, wow. You'll really find anything to argue about. Like, please. What are you doing?
That's I very much so care about animal rights. It's hard these days to call, I don't know how I would label myself, an animal lover, a animal appreciator, and a steward of animals. But there are animal rights activists that I believe there's an overall good intention and good heart and message behind it, and it's people that are wanting to advocate for beings that can't advocate for themselves, and I really appreciate that. But then the girl that we have brought up multiple times on here, Emmy Sprandio, who emo goat mom on Instagram, she recently got her horse's tattoos done. It's a white horse, pink skin, so they tattooed, I think I mentioned it, and that's supposed to help with sun and all sorts of stuff. But she's getting torn apart by people being like, that is, I don't know if someone has actually said animal abuse, but they have been suggesting that she was not doing that with the horse's benefit in mind. And I just think it's so wild because people throw the baby out with the bathwater so often when it's like, look at what's happening. This is a person who is so very established in their care for their animals, and not only should this judgment not be made off the bat with anyone, but especially with someone that has literally years of posts you can scroll through seeing how much she cares and invests in animals and knowledge about caring for animals. And to attack someone like that in the name of animal rights when she's spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars to do a procedure that's trying to really help an animal, it's another example where, vegans and animal rights activists who I believe there were good intentions in mind somewhere there, but now it feels so far gone because people are just being so angry and mean and violent toward others that are choosing to steward or consume animals, even when people don't understand, just because they have a different opinion about if you can hunt ethically or if you can eat animals ethically.
I think it's worth remembering that just because somebody is making a different choice than the choice you would make doesn't mean that it's the wrong choice. And we know that there are times where somebody is actively doing something wrong and actively doing something abusive that people should stand up for and not just say, well, I'm going to mind my own business. But I think the majority of the time, that's not the situation. We're just being like hypercritical. We're in this unprecedented moment of access inside people's lives to see their choices, hear their opinions. Other people that would never before have been able to comment on your training choice with your horse are seeing it. People say that's your choice for putting it online. Of course we know that, but I don't think that the solution is we shouldn't share anything of ourselves if we don't want people to be hypercritical and dogpile on us. That to me kind of feels like the same thing of telling women that we should be cognizant of what we're wearing if we don't want unwanted male attention, when we already know that regardless of that choice, that still happens. Regardless of if I post something so innocuous online that is not controversial, someone can come in and choose to make it an issue. So I think that that's a individual and community responsibility we have to lighten up and not fire off a comment just because it comes to your head. And yeah, this episode, in the name of explaining ourselves, even though ultimately I guess the way I feel is that you can't expect that people like explain every little thing to you, because decisions are complicated and it's hard to know what to do. And a trainer that I've worked with that is really great, a dog trainer that I appreciate so much, has very strong ethics behind what she supports with your animals and dogs, and she does not use any aversives on her dog. That's a pit bull that a lot of people would use a choke collar, a prong collar, other sorts of interventions. She doesn't use that. But a lot of people from the force-free community, which is what it's called in dog training, that you don't like believe in using any tools that can hurt an animal, like have blown up her account several times over because some of her clients do use those tools. And I think she does a good job of explaining that she wants to do the like least intrusive, minimally aversive training possible, and some people don't have those tools yet, and you have to meet them where they're at. And if the only way that they can safely walk their reactive Doberman is on a prong collar, and they're doing their best and they're engaging in training and they're not trying to like be popping hot all the time and overusing it, but that's the only thing that they can do right now to be able to live successfully with their dog. If you don't agree with that and they can't do that, then that dog needs to be euthanized. And I don't think most people that are advocating for animal rights in that context would want behavioral euthanasia for dogs either. So do you see how these issues are complicated, and that you can't just see something and immediately like trust that your first reaction to that is the complete story? And yeah, I'm going off the rails because I could talk about that forever.
I feel like honestly, us having a podcast in general has not only made me think about how I perceive people online and how I share online, but it's just honestly taught me a lot about how I perceive people in general, in real life. Like, there are clearly things that I'm going to think are completely inappropriate and that I'm not okay with, like what I'm talking about being fetishized by a random man. But they're also now about, different comments that I maybe before would have been like more judgmental of, or just, was more critical of a person. Now I do feel like, because I realize and I have to hear myself talk back, I hear back what I have said, and so often when I'm listening to the podcast, when we're preparing it to upload and everything, I have thought, wow, I did not say this thing that I think about that, and I wonder how that's going to be perceived. And I thankfully have, over time with this podcast, become more at peace knowing, like, I just have to trust that I will be taken the way I was intended, and if not, I will have to trust that people can think with nuance and understand that even in an hour-long format, not all of your thoughts and feelings can be said. Even in a 5-hour-long conversation that you have with your besties, I will sometimes leave and be like, oh, I hope that the way I framed that helped them understand what I mean. And it can be, words are a way of communicating how you feel, and it takes practice to do it well. And also there are times that you just either mess up or maybe you don't mess up, but you don't get around to it all. And something I wanted to explain myself about was the chickens thing. I brought up a couple episodes ago that I said I don't think that chickens should be just considered easy, and then it felt a little pretentious in a way that I did not mean it to when I said like I really care to gain close relationships with all of my animals, and I really care about quality time with all of my animals because I thoroughly believe that most people that steward animals in a similar fashion as I do, or at a bigger scale, whatever, really care about their relationships with their animals and care about spending time with them too. And I don't mean that to come off as I am the chicken lady who cares about her chickens and thinks it's harder, but what I really meant by that was I think that people talk about chickens specifically like chickens are stupid. I hear people say chickens are stupid all the time, and it really frustrates me because I don't know what people's measure of intelligence is when they're talking about animals. I hear people say that they have stupid dogs often in life. I've heard that. I hear people say their horses are stupid. I am maybe just a little bit sensitive to the word stupid, but I just don't think most animals are stupid. I don't think chickens are. I think they're actually very smart and funky and curious and fun, and I love getting to know their personalities. And anyway, that's kind of beside the point of what I meant about them not being easy. I think when you're talking big scale on a farm or ranch, that chickens take minimal care, but I think like any animal, you want to be noticing how you want to be enriching their lives. If you are taking on the responsibility of raising animals, I think it's very important to make sure that they have species appropriate lifestyle and that they have interesting things going on in their environment and that they are comfortable with you and etc.
I agree. I think it's a similar thing with cats where people will be like, oh, cats are so easy. All you have to do is feed them and clean their litter box. And I think that's where there's a difference between how an animal is able to survive and when it's really thriving. And chickens are easy to help survive, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't take additional work. And also just, I think you were saying that less from the perspective of how chicken owners act, because I feel like so many of the chicken mamas that I see, they love their birds, they are spending time with them, they are doing activities, making the coop nice, like they earnestly want that. But I think with the wave of homesteading being trendy and throw tradwives on in there and whatnot, I think a lot of people see the lifestyle and think that they want to do that, when I can tell you when we had this atmospheric river hanging over Charlottesville these past 3 days, that I don't think a lot of people, no, obviously plenty of people would and could do it, but it's not like it was that awesome and fun to be out in the mud, my boots getting sucked off, the coop stinks because of the rain. Like the poop usually isn't bad, but it's like giving strong smells from that. Their shavings are all wet, trying to sort it out, making sure their area is nice, whatever. Them getting mites, having to deal with, like, there's just stuff that comes up with animals that is like, yeah, on the day-to-day, is it easy? Are they way easier for me to coordinate care when I'm out of town for the chickens than a dog? 100%. Same I would think with a cat for a dog than a dog. And I also don't think that, like with a cat, a lot of people, I do wish, would play with their cats more, pay a little more attention in those ways, because you and I are like that, and we have that animal stewardship bone in our bodies that makes us just want to pay extra attention to the things we're caring for. It's not only animal its land too. I feel that way with my plants, where I think that I pay special attention to each one of these plants because they're a living thing and I believe they deserve that.
I think being such an animal lover that I know literally the wording that I used recently about the dog I saw in public is that that I like judge their dog training, which I Riley helped me clarify, and it is how I feel. It's like I judge them in a way of making sure that my dog and I were going to be safe and comfortable in the interaction. And I think that having knowledge about things can make you feel worried about people perceiving you as pretentious, because I don't think at all that I know it all about dog training or animal training or animals. I think I know the tip of the iceberg, but that I do invest a lot of my time, energy, money, brain space, waking hours to animal training and animal stewardship. So it's something I'm really passionate about, and I don't mean to be judging people in a way of having a negative lens.
And it's hard when you want people and their animals to be successful and sometimes see something happening with training that I'm pretty confident, like, oh, that's not going to lead to the result that you guys want. And it's especially exacerbating if it's making, like, my life with my dog harder right now. For example, the man that I have told, I didn't tell you about this today, Quinn, but I've told you about this man that every time we walk by with Roger, he asks about if our dogs can meet, and every time the answer is no, because Roger does not do on-leash greetings. Today I saw him again, and I thought, okay, is he going to get the clue, or is he going to ask? And Roger's hackles immediately got up at this dog, and he was like, oh, we can just walk over so they can meet. No, no, thank you. I don't want that. Whatever, you have to be comfortable with setting your own boundaries, but it's different when I was hanging out with a friend. They clearly have a different relationship with their dog and training than what I have, and I didn't offer unsolicited advice because they didn't ask, and I just had to accept, okay, this isn't how I would do it, but this isn't my choice. But then they started tossing grapes in the air for their dog to catch, and in that situation is where I felt like, even though this is unsolicited advice, I think that it's worth sharing, because I think if they knew that grapes were toxic to their dog, would not want to do that, and just let them know, hey, just so you know, dogs can't eat grapes. It can be toxic to them, and it can actually really quickly lead to a dangerous outcome. And they didn't know that and just said thank you. And I think that's where we check in with ourselves of, is this unsolicited advice, even though they're not directly asking me, that I feel like I actually imminently need to get out there because it could be a really bad consequence. And that's same with like strangers. It's obviously a different thing, but if you see someone like about to put themselves in actually serious harm's way, stepping off the edge of the cliff vibes, I
Walking
think that
into the ocean in Hawaii.
Yes, if you see a little redhead confidently striding into the riptide, that's when, you have to but that, again, that's a tough situation, because then they might be like, okay, screw you, I'm actually a professional and I do know what I'm doing. But anyway, it's a funky time. The other thing that I wanted to clarify for the podcast is us saying that we're like loosey-goosey on our book ratings and movies and just saying like everything's great. I just want to make it clear that I feel like I am actually a very critical reader, and I, to a fault, to the point where sometimes I feel like, okay.
To the point where you couldn't enjoy ACOTAR.
Yes, I did not enjoy Akatar. Sorry, God, we can't use this as one of our reels on Instagram unless I really want the floodgates to open. But I didn't think it was good writing. I was so bored, literally forcing myself to read it. But after two books, and I started the third, and then I realized, why am I doing this to myself? I am not enjoying it. I'm just doing it because everyone else is reading this. Need to stop. And that's a great example of I didn't even finish the third book, which, if you know me, when I start a book, I prefer to finish. I don't usually crack it open and decide not to see it through. I have only done that a few times in my life, which is something I'm actually trying to release myself from because I deserve to spend time reading the books I want to read. But in that case, even though I that much thoroughly did not want to read it, that I left it behind, I didn't go onto my app and give it a bad rating. And that's what I mean about with my book rating, not liking to give things a low score. Because in this day and age, for authors and just artists in general, a lot of the times they really rely on those things and what your rating is on like Google reviews or whatever the different platform can really impact your livelihood. And if people are going to go buy your book, participate in your course, whatever it is. So I that's where I personally feel like I don't really want to be stepping on someone's toes with their business when it's not because I think that they're doing unethical business practices or leaving a review because I was, made to feel extremely unsafe in the massage room or something like that. I think that's a different story than if I'm like, I didn't really think that they're an awesome writer, so I probably am not going to return to their books. I don't know. That's just maybe that doesn't even provide much more clarity, but I guess the clarity there is that I will give you a very honest review about my experience with it, and I am a critical reader and a critical viewer, but it's just my personal feeling. I don't really like to, some people really pride themselves on, I never give a book 5 stars, it has to be whatever, and I don't know. I more like to see people win. Quinn used to make fun of me because on Instagram back in the day when we were scrolling through feeds and not stories, she's like, I watch you and you just like every single post you post. I don't know, that's just me.
Yeah, Riley dishes out likes like it ain't no thing. It used to be only the photos, and this is Riley. Every time scroll, double tap, scroll, double tap, scroll, double tap. Which very generous, girl's girl. I love that. What I think about the book review thing is or just reviews in general, I also am not one to be leaving bad reviews. In fact, I maybe there are things that I should have left bad reviews about that I haven't, and that actually we do want to spread and educate when even about a restaurant. Yeah, it is a bummer if it is a small business or something and it's just people trying to make it and trying to get people in. But if the food is really gross, I hope people leave bad reviews, and it makes me sad, but I'm also like, but I don't want to waste my time on that bad food when I could be supporting someone else that's making good food. But while we're on the subject of books and movies, I want to explain myself about the movie theater antics that we had brought up when I was being a grouch, saying that people were laughing loudly in the movie theater, and that I was like, can we just have this be our own thing? But who knows what I prefaced and clarified then, because I'm sure I said that and was like, wait, no, what I mean. But I do think it's fun, and that part of the movie theater culture that's cool is that you are getting to react to something in real time with a group of people, which is just such a very different experience than how it is when you're either definitely at home alone, but even just at home with the fam. So I do actually think that's special, but I stand by what I was talking about with Baby Girl, that there was that group of friends in the movie theater that was like, ah, yes, get it, where it just actually wasn't adding. And I know there are people that think that like yelling out comments can be funny. And if they had nailed it and just done it once and like nailed it on a time that it actually was funny, I could have thought, okay, that added. But the fact that it was like truly 8+ times throughout the movie and just shouting out things that weren't serving and weren't, I didn't think were funny, that's where I'm like, you've just got to know yourself and you've got to know if you're enough of a comedian to have a lasting impact in a positive way, or if you are just kind of screwing with everyone's vibe.
I love that you took your opportunity to explain yourself to stand at 10 toes down on that you do hold that opinion and that that was out of line and that you deserved to be a curmudgeon in that moment. I respect
But
that.
not for the laughing. That's what I'm saying is I
Okay.
was kind of like, oh, everyone's laughing loudly. And that is where I think like COVID times really affected me, because I definitely do still feel like there are the lasting effects of how much I felt like I became a hermit and closed in that time where it's just like head down. Like I talked about, that I now will wear headphones to the grocery store, and I used to never, I wouldn't have even imagined doing that before COVID. But then COVID struck and you're like supposed to mind your business and mind your space, and no one wanted to be interacting with anyone because of fear and everyone having different opinions and everything. That is one of those lasting effects for me, is that I felt that I still will sometimes notice myself feeling like, can we just pretend we are our own bubble even when we're in a community space? And that is something I do want to be kind of unlearning and rewiring my brain, because I think there is actually beauty in engaging with community around you and a room full of people that you don't know. And so I'm proud of myself and I like going to the movie theater for that reason. And the reason I haven't seen Sinners is because guess what happened? We immediately went to Mexico after that episode dropped, so I wasn't able to go before then. And then we ended up with a baby bunny, and it's so worth it, but I don't know what to do right now because, as you guys know, Riley and I have the unlimited movie pass situation, and I feel like I have to cancel it at this point because I'm just not able to be leaving my bunny for a few hours to go to the movies.
Wow, that might be the end of an era, Quinn, because Britain and I were just talking about it, that for the summer when it's like staying light out longer and I just know that I feel like less going to the movies, that I should probably be canceling mine too. And we said maybe like in a few months we'll start back up again if we feel like we'll be using it more, but that we're always so aligned. We didn't even talk about that. Well, we usually do our media updates earlier on in the episode, but this one I'm sliding in at the end because I just remembered with you talking about the movies that the thing I actually am looking forward to seeing soon is the final whatever, I forget what it's called. I think it's the last installment of Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise. And Braden and I wanted to see all the Mission Impossibles before that, so we've been doing like an at-home series marathon, and I had never seen the early Mission Impossibles, like the first three, maybe four, and it's so funny. Like, I'm so glad that we did this because they are just, it's hard not to feel like ridiculous. I feel like now for us to look back at older, like earlier spy movies or things that are supposed to have cool tech, because tech has changed so much that now what would have seemed probably to those viewers like, oh my god, that's crazy, just kind of looks ridiculous, and the special effects, all that. But whether you're an action movie person or not, I feel like you have to give it to Mission Impossible and to Tom Cruise for having whatever sort of like neurodivergency makes him an actually insane person, that he'll do the stunts that he'll do, because it is wild. And so that, I think, is going to be the movie that like closes out or my movie theater era for now.
That's exciting, and I would love to see that as well. Also, so excited to see Miley Cyrus's film coming out, her visual aspect of her album. I can't wait. You guys, May 30th, I believe, is when her new album, Something Beautiful, drops, and all of the singles that she's released so far are so good. And I also love watching her interviews and everything, her press little junket leading up to anything big she's doing. I just love hearing her talk and seeing her outfits and everything. But wait, I don't want to lose this thought, because what was it? Mission Impossible stunts. Oh, but you know what movie that's techie that stands the test of time, and I stand by this? Spy Kids.
Okay.
The gadgets in Spy Kids are so cool and so inspiring, and I still freaking think the look of their multiple watches on the wrist is so badass. And
so fly.
To this day, favorite invention of all time, the cards for the microwave that just make a meal out of literally a card. So fresh. Obviously, Uncle Machete's whole frickin' layer, the frickin' gum they chew, and there's cameras in, like, all of it is so fresh.
Yes, so true. Thank you, Quinn, for reminding us of that gem. Thank you guys for allowing us to explain ourselves like we try every week, but I don't know if I could ever feel satisfactory that my point was fully grasped and came across the way I wanted it to. Like, even with Prepped, this is honestly exposure therapy for perfectionism, because even when I do a piece of writing and you have the opportunity to like take your time to say something exactly how you want to say it and edit it, you can never, I don't know if it's true never, but my personal experience is I'm like, you just don't know, because what Quinn might read it and fully get it, and someone else takes it a totally different way. And that's why we all like have the ability to analyze and come to our own conclusions. But we hope that you understand our essence, if not the minutia of everything that we say on this podcast. We appreciate you being here with us. Remember to subscribe and turn on your automatic downloads. Leave a review if you feel so inclined, and you're the type of person like Quinn and I that feels like anything below a 4-star review is just probably better kept to yourself or said in the privacy of your own home. You can find us at the Q&R code at Quinn Liljestrom and at Riley Liljestrom. If you need some more redheads in your feed, you're going to want to follow us there. We'll talk to you next week. Goodbye. Bye.